Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.rent. I'm Justin Lewis.
And I'm Tanner Wayland.
And we are here to help you tell better stories for yourself and your players as you dungeon master sessions of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. We'd like to give you some quick announcements. We actually have one before the show, and then after the show, if you want to stick around, we have some more announcements then as well. But first, let's talk about this. Tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, critting, sarcasm, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. Awesome. With that out of the way, we can get into today's show.
Hello, my name is Tanner Wayland, and I'm here with my co-host and good friend, Justin. Justin, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. For you, those of you who don't know who we are, we are the hosts of a little podcast we like to call How to Be a Better DM. And in this podcast, we explore how each of us can provide the best worlds, adventures, and play environment for our players. Today, it's a little bit of a different topic. It's one that, I'm not sure if everybody is as tapped into this as we are, but I feel like I've seen everybody talk about it. It's about D&D, and specifically the new OGL 1.1 that got leaked. We're going to talk about how that, affects us as DMs, because that's, if we were just doing any old podcast, I don't think it would matter as much, but, DMs are by their nature creative. And when you create things, oftentimes you want to see how you can, share it with people. And sometimes, you worry about things like, oh, am I allowed to share this or create or riff off of it or make money? And we're going to talk about all of that. First off, Justin, what's new with you?
What's new with me? Well, we have, so a lot of you don't know, in Utah, which is where I live, me and a couple of friends, we are putting on an event in 2 weeks, 2 Saturdays, kind of a business networking event. And, that's kind of moving forward. The idea is we're going to use D&D to business network. So get people together playing D&D and then, help them build relationships and connections and so forth. Anyways, so we're having this awesome event. If you're in the Utah area, I'll put the link in the show notes if you want to come. We still have some tickets available. But other than that, I don't know that too much is really new. Just enjoying the new year and trying out new things here and there. Not big things, but just, little things. So what about you?
I mean, that sounded pretty big to me. I've never run a pseudo business, gaming meeting. Gosh. Yeah, I mean, for me, my wife, Kirsty, and I, we moved into a new townhome. That happened basically New Year's Eve. And since then, it feels like it's been 12 years, but we're doing well. We're just slowly getting furniture, putting it together, cleaning the house, throwing all of our dirty secrets and boxes into the unused bedroom, and pretending like our lives are in order. But Yeah, honestly, it's been great. It's been really nice. It's just been busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise, very excited. I've got an actual office now, an office room. It's not just mine. It's, we share it. But Kirsty was telling me because I don't know. I'm someone that has a hard time like decorating a room in the ways I want because I'm like, oh, I feel like I've never had a space that's just mine to decorate.
Yeah.
And so like I see this room and she's like, oh, you could put some stuff in it, and she emphasized some because
Uh-huh.
she was like, you can't wreck the office and turn it into some weird nerd castle. And I
But
was like,
it should be, because that's what is awesome.
I mean, that's what I said. And then suddenly I'm on the couch. No, I'm just kidding.
Classic.
That never happened. But honestly, I'm excited to decorate a little bit. Maybe, who knows, put a little neon sign on the wall. Oof. Could you imagine?
That would be amazing.
Anyway, yeah, so I'm excited with that. But
Awesome.
yeah, I mean, I think that it's a great month and it's going to be a great year. It's already been a very exciting start
Heck yeah.
to the year. Well, perfect. Justin, let's launch in. So the topic, the OGL 1.1, and if anybody is wondering what the OGL stands for, that's just the open game license. Basically, back in 2000, the original open game license, it basically just made it so that creators could develop their own content inspired by the world of D&D, and specifically that Wizards of the Coast, the kind of company that created and sells D&D, that kind of allows a lot of freedom for creators. Whereas this new OGL 1.1 is really reining that in, and people aren't happy about it.
Yeah. Honestly, to put it in perspective, so if you are in the Dungeon Master space on Instagram or any of the social media, you've probably seen thousands of memes about the OGL, and they are all very funny. And I would highly recommend it. It's a very great way to spend your day. But the idea behind the OGL is, or at least this whole kerfuffle, is all about intellectual property and the idea that ideas can belong to someone. So, this podcast is the intellectual property of me and Tanner. And as of right now, we don't have any sort of open game license like D&D did in 2000. We don't have anything like that. So if you copied this show or took the show and kind of made your own version of it, we'd probably come after you. Not that we have that many resources, but the point is, the question behind this is it legal for D&D to do this? Is it moral? And do we like it? I think those are all kind of the underlying questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something to put this in perspective is just kind of starting point, because that's something to keep in mind about this reaction. Because if somebody, just to give you some, like, a little bit of nitty gritty about what's in the new OGL that got leaked. Well, let's just say that it's leaked, not official. And you can bet that after the uproar that's happened, that it's not going to remain as it was.
Or at least you'd hope, right?
At least you'd hope, right? They put out some like a response that seems like they quote unquote learned somewhat of a lesson. We'll see. I mean, they still are focusing on their bottom line, and that it still means them wanting more control.
Mm-hmm.
But with the OGL, one of the big differences is like, oh, if you're a creator over who makes over $700,000 a year, then you have to pay a royalty, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And except for, of course, some of their favored creators, I'm sure
Right.
Matt Mercer, Dimension 20. things like that, they're going to be fine. But like as everybody knows, it's kind of a booming creative business space for D&D and for the tabletop role-playing games in general. So like there might be more people who make more than 700,000 off of D&D products. And so getting back to my point about starting point, right? Like Disney, if you made like $20 or $100 off of selling and creating Disney stuff, you know, they might come after you if you're doing it in a very like high visibility manner, right? And now probably not actually 20 or $100, but like much less than 700,000, they'd come at you if you're going and selling like Mickey stuff as if you were Disney, even though you're not. Now, the OGL, so if you were Disney and they were like, hey, you can sell Disney branded stuff and Disney things that are, and even like movies and video games based off Disney stuff, and you know, you don't have to pay royalties until you make 700,000. No one would care. Like no one would care that it's like, oh my goodness, they're giving us royalties, because they'd be like, oh my goodness, that's actually a lot more than I expected out of Disney, right?
Yeah.
And that this isn't my example. This is an example. There's this YouTuber called Legal Eagle, and I thought it was a great example, because on the other side we have D&D with the OGL, which was like, hey, if you want to go for it, just go, like go crazy, you know. With some limitations. It wasn't like they were, you know, completely free. Like they had some trademarked monsters and things like that. But in the probably not trademarked, more like copyrighted. But in the end, because people had so much freedom, that's part of the reason why Dungeons and Dragons became so popular. But it's also why people are like, what the heck? Because it's, you know, it feels like night and day.
Yeah.
You know, but it's going from day a little closer to night, so to speak. Whereas the other metaphorical example, or a fictional example of Disney, that would have been like going from night to day, because they're like lightening up on restrictions, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas this is kind of clamping down. Sorry, that was a lot of thoughts, but that's kind of, you know, a thought I've been having.
I love it. So kind of a simple summary for kind of the timeline of how things have gone down, at least from my point of view, and why I think this is happening. So 2000, there's the OGL. Basically, D&D says, hey, you know, community, we can make this better, everyone together. You guys can take it and run with it, like you said. And then Wizards of the Coast came out with, I believe it was 4.5, which was terrible, or 4th edition or something like that. And so it was so bad that a company called Paizo started coming up with their own version of D&D. It was extremely similar but different in important ways, called Pathfinder. I'm pretty sure you've probably heard of that. And then Pathfinder started growing, and then 5e came out, and you know, 5e started getting much more popular. So from what I understand is Hasbro, who owns Wizards of the Coast, looked at the bottom line of Wizards of the Coast and said, hey, your D&D property, your Dungeons and Dragons property is not making as much money as it could. So let's rein in the competitors that we've ourselves created, in a sense, and make it so we make money from them. And we also own their gaming system, essentially, because it's based on ours. Kind of going back to those questions that I asked, is it legal? Is it moral? Do we like it? So one, is it legal? 100%. So this is essentially Brandon Sanderson writing a book, getting wildly popular, and then saying, hey, you can go write a book if it's based on my stuff, right? If it's based on my stuff, that's fine. Someone else writes a book on that. It's based on Brandon Sanderson's stuff, but it changes very important things, and it also becomes wildly popular. Brandon Sanderson would still have the right to be able to say, hey, I'm going to change things that are happening in my world that I made. You know, Disney did this essentially with Expanded Universe Star Wars. They bought the Star Wars property, and then they found all these books that were written in the Expanded Universe and said, these are no longer canon. We can still have them, but they essentially still belong to us, but they're not the actual story, right?
Yeah.
And then morally, I think this is where I draw the line. It's one thing to put something out and say, hey, this is going to cost you money, right? It's one thing for Brandon Sanderson, I guess I'm just sticking with that example, to put out a book and say, this is mine, you have to abide by this copyright. It's another thing entirely for Brandon Sanderson to put out a book for free and say anyone can use it, change it, make differences to it, whatever. For 20 years, see that someone else is using his stuff and getting rich off of it, and then saying, hey, we're changing what I said earlier because I want a piece of that pie. I think that's where morally I disagree with what Wizards of the Coast is doing. More Hasbro, really. What about you, Tanner?
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. I think that obviously there are two reasons why they did it in the first place, right? They wanted it to be, basically to make it more ubiquitous, more widespread among people, just to, increase that community. And I think it's helped them a lot. But then reining it in and being like, okay, now we reap the profits. Everybody sees it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes very transparent, just to go from very little restriction to restrictions. And as much as like when they released a response, they said that it was about like, hey, we want to reduce discrimination. We want to combat people using our properties for, blockchain or NFTs or anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or crypto. And we were all like, oh, so then why is there so much in there that isn't about that? And I think that they really shot themselves in the foot from a PR perspective. Like you said, it is probably fairly legal. Now, there's some, hang-ups on like, oh, the original OGL said that it would last, in perpetuity, for forever.
Right.
But here's the thing. In all likelihood, we're never going to find out because anybody who has enough money, they're already changing their system and they're changing the IP that they're using so that they don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
Right. Like Paizo, they recently in the past few years, like past couple, they put out Pathfinder 2nd edition, which like the first edition was very similar to D&D, right? And specifically, I think they were copying 3.5.
I believe
I think they were doing. But the second edition is very different in terms of like not only just like the different like characters and things like that, but also the mechanics. So it's like easily distinguishable. And like people like that and other things and like Cobalt Press and things, they're all developing their own systems because in a way that's another thing that could happen here and is happening is that, hey, if people don't want to fight that legal battle, then they'll just create their own systems, Yep. People have had enough time to kind of marinate in the marinade that is D&D. So now they can go out and create their own thing. But if there was any illegality here, it would take somebody fighting in court for like a lot of money and they might not win. So frankly, like, yeah, there's nothing to really stop them from doing this because no one's going to actually push it in court that much,
right.
To the point where a judge would have to rule on it. So yeah, I think that it's, I think it from the perspective of a business who created something, I'm like, hey, it's in their right. But from a business, like you said, who basically started out on such a different foot, and then we're like, oh, rug pull.
Yep.
Then I think that it's dubious, and I don't think it's going to turn out well for them. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they monetize a little bit more with certain people, but I think they're going to lose the widespread appeal.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what's most important for us to talk about now,
yes.
With the few minutes we have left, is really how this affects Dungeon Masters, or how we believe this affects Dungeon Masters as a whole. So for you and me who play with our friends, in our kitchen and just on the kitchen table, it's not really going to affect us other than where our money goes and to whom. For the people who are creating things and putting on DM's Guild or things like that, it may affect, again, how your money or who your money goes to. It also might affect how expensive or how much money you can earn. And it might also affect how much control you ultimately have, in the end of the day, really. Other than that, though, I don't see many differences for the people listening to this show, unless you are, a very prolific creator. You might have some big changes to make. But other than that, this probably shouldn't affect you too much. Do you have any other opinions on that, Tanner?
No, yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that for most people, even people who are, creating content and putting it in smaller places, you're gonna probably be fine. Now, keep in mind that could change. They even within the OGL 1.1 leak, there were provisions where they could change it and update it, like if they want. Mm-hmm. And so, like, if they turn all evil empire on us, maybe even just like small creators will also have to pay a royalty. At which point, if you want to do that, cool. If you don't, I'm sure there's other people out there who won't make you do that. Mm-hmm. But one thing to keep in mind is that, like, hey, you can still get content from the Wizards of the Coast, and it's great content. And if you choose to go elsewhere, that's great content too. The good news is, if you're just having a friendly game, nobody's watching you, nobody's making money. So nobody cares too much about how you're doing it. They just care that you're having fun and coming back. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. No one cares if you're not making money. No one cares. They just care that you're having fun, and someday you might spend money on it. So
exactly.
I love it.
Well, perfect. Honestly, this was a little bit of a different topic, but it's out there, and I'm sure some people have been curious. So hopefully, if you're still curious about this, there's a lot of wonderful articles, a lot of wonderful YouTube videos. We recommend that you do so, but mostly we recommend that you just continue having a great time. If this doesn't affect you, then don't worry about it more than you need to, and get out there, gather a group of friends, and roll initiative.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First,
did you ever fall in love with the library as a kid? It was a place where you could experience 1,000 stories without having to buy 1,000 books. That is what Monsters.Rent can do for your D&D campaign. You can rent and swap out as many quality miniature monsters and creatures for your D&D party as you could ever want, without having to buy them. You can rescue villagers from a kobold camp, or lead your party through the fighting forest, or many more adventures. We're coming out with new bundles all the time. Just sign up for our subscription to get access to your own personal library of minis. Go to monsters.rent to find out more. That's the website. monsters.rent. Get your library pass to a world of minis today.
we also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Stardust and Dragons. I'm going to let one of the cast of Stardust and Dragons, Christian Hatcher, and his crew tell you a little bit more about it.
This August, a new adventure podcast is coming to a platform near you, filled with action.
You one of the two of them. We can't keep taking hits like that.
Drama.
Everything that she's been doing, everything she's going to do, finally sets in.
And Stardust.
Help! Help! Someone, please!
Find out more about this epic odyssey at stardustanddragons.com, where adventure awaits in the stars.
That's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, we'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.